It was the most common high school math class. But the main character, schoolgirl Jolie, it seems, was not at all to study. The girl was looking at her classmate, a guy named Nate. He changed his hairstyle, to which she paid attention. The appearance of the classmate was really beautiful. White skin like an aristocrat and harmonious eyes, nose, and mouth. In the first place, it seemed to the girl that the atmosphere around him was not that of others. I think it's because of his calm and reserved character. Even though Nate was relegated to ambiguous times, he quickly became a prince. The teacher noticed that the boy was not concentrating well in class, so the man asked him to go to the blackboard and solve the problem, to which the student replied that it was very difficult. "What's difficult since you transferred here from Seoul?" the teacher asked in an angry tone. After the newcomer was unable to solve the problem, Jolie was called to the blackboard. The girl solved the complex equation without any problems, for which she received praise from the teacher. "Well, good job. It seemed like you had your head in the clouds, as expected of the first student in the class," said the mathematician. The girl was the top student not only in the class, but also in the school, although her institution seemed to her as something snotty and at a low level. After the schoolgirl returned back to her seat, the teacher admonished the slightly behind in the program to the boy. "Nate, you should put in more effort, even if it is some girl. Aren't you ashamed to lose to her?" said the man not very competently. The class was coming to an end, so one of the students decided to remind him about it because he wanted to go to the toilet very badly. "Teacher, class is over," the boy said to the whole class. "Hey, Bob, the teacher decides when to end the lesson," replied the formidable teacher. But that didn't stop the kid from expressing his thoughts for a second. Bob started telling him that he wanted to go to the restroom, and if they wouldn't let him go, the student would do it right there. At recess between classes, a newcomer, Nate, approached the top student. "Jolie, I'm really sorry. I'm the reason you had to get out," the guy said in a sad tone. "Get out of the way. Get out of the way. I want to use the restroom. You're blocking the way." That's what the pretty boy got in return. After the girl decided to go out, the guy was approached by another classmate who also decided to complain about the quiet girl. "A bad temper, isn't it?" she said. This bully advised a classmate not to socialize with Jolie. It wasn't surprising either. "Everything is dirty. The things I'm wearing are old and worn out," the poor girl thought to herself. "Even though there are people like me, I'm the worst. However, he is completely different," thought the girl regarding the new student. When the sun goes down, it gets dark quickly in the mountains. Jolie went up there every day after school, and there was a good reason for that. "Unfortunately, my home is not a suitable environment for studying. I could have stayed at school, but it's not the same there either," the schoolgirl thought sadly. "If they see me and want to bully me, I don't want to get in too much trouble," she decided for herself. Then the protagonist accidentally found an extraordinary place. It's an old house that looks like a warehouse. She found it while walking when her drunken mother slapped her in the face. It was so quiet here, like a temple, since there are mountains here. It was cool in the evening since it is the beginning of summer. It was a place to focus on studying, so it was a great find for Jolie. The furniture inside, if she thought so, and not too old. But it was clear that someone had lived there not too long ago. But that didn't matter to her at all anymore. It was empty, and that was all that mattered. In fact, there's another person who knows about the house. It was the same classmate who had earlier asked to use the restroom in class, Bob. In high school? No, the worst guy in our neighborhood. That's what the girl thought he was. When she came to study, Bob was otherwise only sleeping. "Doesn't look like you've only come in now. Been sleeping all this time?" Without an ounce of surprise, the girl asked. He offered the student a delicious soup that he decided to make himself. "Should I add an egg or not?" Bob decided to ask in order to please the girl. As was evident, this abandoned house is the one they use together. I've known who he is for a long time. The fact that he came here when he was in middle school after losing his parents as a child and moving constantly from one relative's house to another. Jolie knew. Rumor has it that he was forced to transfer because he beat up a teacher at his old school. Someone said they had a family of gangsters and he used to beat up his parents. "And I heard he beats people up every night," the gossip said. The rumors were terrible. Even though the guys were in the same class, they never interact with each other. Bob just sits behind the girl. And Jolie thought that's how it would be for the rest of high school. But the girl really liked this house. It was a wonderful place where she could concentrate and solve her lessons in peace. It had been about a week since the student found the house by chance and started visiting. Jolie went there every night and solved her lessons. Everything was very peaceful, but only until she saw Bob on the bed located on the second floor. "And sorry, I didn't realize the house was yours. There was no lock, so I thought it was empty. I was just leaving," informed the girl, nervously gathering her things. But Jolie didn't realize what was going on at all. "It's Bob! Since when has he been here? And why does this house belong to him? We have to get out of here fast!" Pondering quietly, she continued to pack up the place. "It's not my house. It's been empty for a month. Nobody lives here." The guy reassured the girl, after which Jolie wanted to know what he was doing here. "Sleeping. Come to study. I'm going to sleep, so you can go ahead," replied the bean, and decided to go up to his second floor. The classmate silently went upstairs and lay down on the bed. It was very quiet around him. He's just going to take off like that and fall asleep? At a moment like this? The girl was very surprised at this turn of events. The protagonist decided that it would be right for her to leave. But now she didn't understand what she should do. However, there's no better place to study than this. The schoolgirl reasoned objectively. "But Bob isn't the homeowner. He's the one who found the house before I did. Can the bad guy have title to it?" The quiet girl didn't understand. The silent girl decided to go up to the second floor to the sleeping guy without any explanation. Due to her clumsiness, she sharply hit her head on the ceiling, which was a couple of centimeters away from her head. The girl seemed to have completely forgotten that she was a high bed. Jolie involuntarily wanted to leave, but then Bob held her hand and pulled her to him. The girl was very close to the guy, so close that she could feel his breath on the back of her neck. "Didn't you notice when you went up? The ceiling here is very low. Be careful," he said with a drop of concern in his words. Abruptly, in a moment, Jolie realized that right now her thighs were touching her classmate's thighs. The girl pushed herself out of Bob's embrace with all her might. She was embarrassed. The boy knew she had come here to study. He had seen something like this already yesterday. "That's when I woke up and saw someone sitting at the table, and it was the back of your head, and then I went back to sleep." He shared. Bob easily recognized the girl from the back. "I'm sitting behind you. One behind you, actually," he explained, and though it was strange in Jolie's opinion, it was a logical explanation. "If your target was a bed, I'd kick you out. But it looks like it's a desk, so I just left it and figured I could keep it that way." Narrated a classmate. "We both need a quiet place. We have different desires, so we won't get in each other's way," Bob decided, to which she agreed in principle. Even though the guy could have just slept at home, Jolie realized he didn't just come here out of boredom. So he has his own circumstances, too. She reasoned. Now the new owners of the house decided that they should somehow secure the entrance. "Are you sure people like me won't show up again? We'll have to put a lock on it. I'll bring it next time. I'll share it with you, too," the student decided. After a classmate handed the girl a key, Jolie went down to her area. Bob understood who Jolie was, first in school. But the girl reported that her academic performance did not mean that she was a bad judge of character, although others might not have believed it. But nothing could be done now. She had no other options now. That's how the coexistence of the school's best student Jolie and the usual bully high school student Bob began. And now they live without much trouble, sharing each other's zones. Bob just sleeps on the second floor, and Jolie studies on the first floor. Personally, the guys are fine with it. But even as they befriended him in the house, the relationship at school remained the same, even though they didn't pretend to know each other. For one thing, the school children simply did not talk. Of course, they don't socialize much at home either, but the guy kindly cooks dinner for the girl every night. "I wonder if we can just talk after Bob brings the soup and boils it," a classmate wondered. "But eating a dish like that every day is bad. Anyway, you can't worry. He doesn't seem like a bad guy." Relieved, she analyzed and decided the first student of the school. That night it was business as usual. They argued a bit amongst themselves about the flavor of the soup and how many eggs were better to put in. "E? The yolks are mixed in, aren't they? Though 2 of them don't, but 3 of them do. I don't like soup when it's like this," the girl said fastidiously. "They're boiled in the same pot. You can't match our tastes at the same time. Eat if you want." The tall guy continued to argue. When the dish was ready, the guys sat down at the table to enjoy the resulting dish. But the girl's roommate accidentally got soup broth on her t-shirt. "I was thinking of wearing it for another day." Ah, him. If only my fists were bigger by just a little bit. Angered the girl. Then Bob set his plate aside and ordered the girl to take off her shirt. As strange as it may sound, the classmate wanted to help Jolie. At that point, the bully took off his t-shirt to hand it to the girl. "Carry her for a while. I got you dirty," Bob declared, handing his friend his own thing. The girl really didn't know if it was necessary. However, laundry is such a chore. Only cold water flows in the morning and evening. If I could make this chore easier on myself. She thought it over. The roommate left the room for her to change her clothes. A couple minutes later, the girl appeared in front of him, already standing in someone else's clothes. She handed the dirty underwear to the guy. In turn, Bob ordered her to stay where she was and not to go anywhere. In the meantime, he went to launder the stain. It was funny for Jolie to see him like that. Now that I look at him like that, he seems really good. Not even any tattoos on his back. That's a lot different from the first impression, isn't it? Without noticing it herself, Jolie casually grabbed the edge of her t-shirt and brought it right up to her nose. Bob turned around and noticed this action. "What are you doing?" the guy asked, surprised. The girl pretended that the soup was very spicy, so she just waved her hand in front of her nose, ostensibly to lower the fiery sensation in her mouth. In reality, the schoolgirl was very uncomfortable. After a delicious lunch, Jolie sat down to do her homework. When she accomplished everything, the girl started to get ready to go home. That's when the guy got out of his favorite crib on the second floor. "At first, I considered telling him I was leaving. Every time he wakes up at just the right moment." One of these days, Bob decided to offer to walk the schoolgirl home. It was already quite dark outside, but Jolie refused, on the pretext that she had her own flashlight. "What color do you think the flashlight is at night?" the guy asked, and kept insisting on walking her out. Then he silently reached into his locker and pulled out a large, long stick. The girl was already scared since the bully is known for violent incidents, but the guy was only concerned for Jolie's safety. "Hold on, explore after me," said the roommate, extending the stick right into the girl's hands. That's exactly what happened. Thus they walked together to the schoolgirl's house. "Back then, I didn't know yet that this would happen every time," the protagonist commented. "Using a stick to do that. I think I keep seeing the other side of the rumors," pondered Jolie. As they walked home together, the girl noticed that her friend looked like a cat. "I'll call you that. Cats have good night vision. Their pupils are wide open so they can see well in low light," she said jokingly. Also, on the way out, the girl decided to ask him how much he slept. "I was just thinking, how am I going to get home at night if you don't show up one day?" explained the girl, to which the guy replied to her that she should go home before the sun sets. They reached Jolie's apartment quietly. The student wanted to say thank you, but Bob silently disappeared from sight without even saying goodbye. She didn't have time to open her mouth. Every time she went home, she realized why she was so reluctant to go back there again. It was easy to guess from the empty bottles by the front door that her mother had been drinking again today. The girl opened the door, hoping that her mother had already fallen asleep. But then that hateful, skinny face appeared in front of her. The mother was drunk again, and that day decided to pour a bowl of cold water directly on her daughter. Jolie stood there soaking wet. The girl wondered why she hadn't come back a little later today. The next day was gym class at school. Walking through the stadium, Jolie was accosted by that nasty girl, the bully of the class. "Oh, sorry, didn't see it. My mistake," she said, laughing defiantly. It was clear it was all on purpose. The smart girl didn't want to restrain herself any longer and showed a not-so-nice gesture right in the bully's face. If it were a normal day, then Jolie would not get in her way. But today, the protagonist is not feeling well. Looks like the problem was caused by being outside yesterday with a wet body. Apparently the girl got sick. Already in class, when the whole class was playing volleyball, Jolie began to notice that something was going wrong. The ball that was so fortunately close to her hands was constantly being snatched away by other players, preventing her from making a shot. Are they doing this on purpose now? They want to make me a pariah in the game? Ha, are they serious? Realized the girl. I'd rather just get knocked out, a schoolgirl guessed. At some point, the student realized that her condition was getting worse and worse. I can't. I'll just say I need to go to the nurse's station and leave, Jolie decided. But no sooner had she taken a step than a ball flew right at her. A few seconds later, the poor girl was on the floor. When she opened her eyes, she was already in the hospital. Then the girl realized that she had finally lost consciousness. It was a hospital room, so it was also very hot. The nurse who entered the hospital room also felt very warm. Who put a heater in here, even in the middle of summer? It was no wonder why it was so hot. The doctor decided to touch the girl's forehead to find out her temperature. The doctor decided to touch the girl's forehead to check her temperature. The fever is so bad, I don't even know if it's the flu or another illness. Why, if you're so sick, didn't you excuse yourself from gym class? Asked the nurse to scold the child a little. Finally, the doctor advised the schoolgirl to rest at home for a while. At that moment, the girl heard a familiar voice in the hospital corridor. "Is there anyone at school who would visit me?" She didn't understand. Jolie assumed it was her roommate, Bob. But then a newcomer abruptly appeared. Nate announced that he had come to inquire about a classmate's condition. "I've come during other breaks, but you were still asleep then," the boy confessed. "I was worried, thinking you might have to go to the hospital. It's the first time I've ever seen someone pass out." And sincerely said the guy. He had originally thought that the girl had fainted because of him, but she had only just passed out just from the pain in her body. "Well, we need to change the situation," the schoolgirl decided. "What did you come to see after you threw the ball with all your might? Did you want to see me hurt?" Jolie wanted to say, just to mess with the guy a little. "You haven't been feeling well since you came to school today. I was worried when we played dodgeball. They were chasing the ball like they were aiming to hit you on purpose. I thought it would be better if you got knocked out and rested," the young lad admitted. He must have used more force than expected, which caused her to pass out. The guy admitted he was sorry. How can a person be so honest? Here it would be very difficult for me to apologize or thank, the girl thought at that moment. However, his world must be different from mine in warmth. You're never bothered by people who might be harmful, reasoned Jolie. It's okay. I don't think any bones are broken. The bruises will go away soon. The sick girl comforted the guy. That's when the schoolgirl found out that it was Nate who had put a heater in the room. But in any case, she was grateful to him. The girl got up from the bed and decided to head for the hallway, but after taking one step, her eyes went dark. That's when the guy immediately caught up and took her hand. "Don't make any sudden movements," carefully he advised. At this minute, the door in the room opened. It's Jolie's roommate came to support the girl. There was an awkward silence. To break the tension, Nate decided to say something. "Bob, "Do you have a pain somewhere too? The doctor's not here right now," pointed out the right guy. The girl herself didn't understand why he had come to the nurse's station. Jolie couldn't believe that Bob could be worried about her, but the bully didn't stay in the room for long. Bob only opened the pill cabinet and took a packet of pills, then left the room. Nate immediately exhaled a sigh of relief. "I'm a little uncomfortable around Bob," the classmate admitted. The girl, however, continued to think of her own. "It's not just you. Why did he take the medicine? Is he sick? I'll ask him when I see him." She decided and headed for the exit. Nate, like a true gentleman, offered to walk her home. But in turn, she said she'd rather not. "I'm already fine. You don't have to worry," calmed the guy's schoolgirl. Although, in fact, the girl just did not want anyone to know about her situation at home. Jolie headed for her signature spot. Upon arrival, she noticed that the lock was untouched. "It doesn't look like Bob came here," noticed the girl, and with a sad mood she walked into the house. She had no strength at all, but in spite of her condition, the excellent student thought that she should study. The more so because she had only a short time left before the exam. "Perhaps it has to do with my own stubbornness, but until I finish my studies, I don't want to give up my first place to anyone, because it's a reward and a title that I proudly earned through my abilities," the girl thought. Still, she couldn't afford to lose him, especially at a school like this. Even so, she kept looking toward the bed on the second floor. "Maybe it's because I'm tired, but the urge to sleep is constantly keeping me awake. It feels like a slight fever is coming back. I think if I get some sleep, I'll feel better," the girl decided, but kept contradicting herself to concentrate. Still, Jolie couldn't take it anymore and decided to get some sleep. Rest is important too. As she fell asleep, she kept thinking about recent events, thinking about the handsome classmate and the recent situation with Bob. "He's not going to kill me for venturing into his territory, is he? And when I almost fell over, he showed up and made me embarrassed?" Jolie scrolled through her head, What did he think when he saw me with Nate standing next to me? From the look on his face, he didn't look surprised or like he was trying to tease me. But Bob isn't the kind of person whose emotions can be read by facial expressions. Why do I feel like he's coming right now? If he does, will he wake me up? The girl continued to speculate, and soon, before she knew it, she was asleep. Jolie was startled by someone's shadow blocking her light. When she opened her eyes, she saw an incomprehensible, fearful force from the guy in front of her. The girl decided to try to charge her fists right at the silhouette's face, but then someone squeezed her hands hard. When she finally woke up, she realized that her roommate was standing in front of her. She threw the guy off of her with a yell, causing him to bang his head against the wall. "Why are you standing over me?" she shrieked fearfully. But the bully also began to sarcasm to the girl. "How do I know it was you? I thought someone broke in here. I forgot. Are you crazy? What are you doing here? Do you know what time it is?" Swearing shouted back at the guy. "It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You didn't sit up until this hour usually, and the door was unlocked. You slept with the door open? Are you out of your mind?" Bob scolded her like a little sister. As a result of the argument, Bob voiced his misunderstandings about why the girl doesn't sleep at home, whereupon Jolie turned the cards over to him. "Why aren't you at home yourself? Why come here at this hour and make a fuss? At 2 o'clock in the morning?" She continued. Then the guy mentioned that the second floor wasn't her territory after all. The girl only continued to shout in response. "What's wrong with you? You're taking over my territory? I only used it because you weren't here. My head hurts to death. My whole body aches. Of course I was sleepy, so I decided to get some rest. I apologize. I've committed a terrible sin." The schoolgirl sarcastically continued to justify herself, so Bob decided to just leave and let her use the bed for her own pleasure and just let the girl calm down. But still, he knew she'd fainted from the ball. At some point, the guy realized that leaving the sick girl here alone was a stupid thing to do. Jolie also noticed the worry. Was he worried? Thought he was going to laugh at me for sleeping for so long, pronounced the student to herself. After he quizzed her about what was hurting her, the roommate silently went downstairs. As he walked up the stairs, Jolie wondered how he could see anything at all in the dark. He must really have cat vision. How can you get down so well? I can't see anything at all, thought the protagonist. When he was on the first floor, the girl shouted her thoughts to him. From now on, turn on the lights if you go up the stairs. If you fall down the stairs, you will die instantly. With worry, the girl ordered, though he didn't take it seriously as she was too fragile to say such a thing to him. Bob went downstairs to open the very medicine that was given earlier in the hospital. The girl decided to go down to the first floor as well, but her classmate wouldn't let her do so. "Don't. I'll do it myself," he said courageously. When he handed her the pill, the girl inquired where the guy got them from. Bob admitted that he had menstrual cramps. Jolie laughed. "Ha ha 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 ha! Our Bob is having menstrual cramps. If only I had a close friend I could tell. Ha 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 ha!" She continued to laugh, to which the classmate replied that she should only be proud of it. "Won't it make a fuss in your house?" "You didn't go there, even though it's so late," interrupted Bob's laughing friend. Then Jolie informed him that she could just stay here for the night. But that message the guy wasn't too happy about. "Get off. The bed is mine," the roommate declared. The girl kept assuring him that Bob shouldn't sleep so much, since he wasn't doing anything at school, but that didn't help in gaining sleeping rights. "And this kind of thing is being said to me by someone who has slept all day? Stop picking on me and go home. I'll walk you there," Picky promised Bob. Stubborn Jolie proved that she was going to stay here that night. Then the guy decided to leave, but the student didn't want to be alone. "Then you stay too. I'm not saying we should sleep together," the modest girl said in a quiet voice. "Didn't we make an unspoken agreement about why each of us needs a home? He's your place of study," Bob pointed out menacingly. But in that moment, the girl admitted that it's the only place she can rest. "I never thought I'd end up saying something like that to another person, but I guess it's okay if it's you who I share space with," the schoolgirl confessed, and talked about how she can't go home. "I guess it's okay to share information. Your reason for being here right now might be the same as mine," the girl said to herself, thinking about what she had just said. After such an admission, Bob only went downstairs in silence. The guy had to sleep at a desk that night. Jolie then actually stayed up sleeping in the comfort of the second floor of the house. "It's a strange place, but it's cozy. The dawn is dark, but I'm not afraid because Bob is downstairs. Since when has his presence been a relief rather than a danger?" pondered the girl before going to bed. The girl had passed out earlier, so she didn't notice that the whole bed smelled slightly of Bob. Mild, but refreshing. Although his temper, he probably doesn't use cologne, thought Jolie. But that smell was quite pleasant before her. Anyway, the bully is really different from how he looks. The girl would even say he's much better. The next morning, Jolie woke up in a great mood. "How long has it been since I last slept so soundly? My fever has gone down and I don't feel any pain. It's a refreshing morning." The schoolgirl was overjoyed to finally be so pleasantly rested. Looking at the first floor, the student noticed that her roommate was making his signature soup as usual. She went down to have breakfast with him. When Jolie saw the composition of his dish, the girl scolded the guy again for making broth with egg. But the breakfast was still delicious, for which Jolie was actually very grateful to her friend. Near the sink, where the guy was washing dishes, was his towel. The schoolgirl decided to use it since she was planning to take a shower anyway, and Bob himself was not against it. He even advised the girl to first heat the water and then only use it. At this time, the guy decided to get some sleep. Well, his jokes were not without merit. "How am I supposed to sleep in there? You're all sweaty, aren't you?" he said, concluding why she decided to take a shower. A couple of hours later, the protagonist was already at school. On the way there, Jolie accidentally met the very bullies of the class. "Are you okay yet? You look so good, it's disappointing." Tried to pick on one of the high school girls. "Are you pleased yourself? I had no idea you'd resort to such sneaky tactics. Your fake fainting makes me laugh, just to get the attention of a handsome man named Nate," the girl declared. Then the quiet girl asked if she thought she wanted his attention for some reason. The bully only tried to prove that they had already figured it all out for themselves and had known for a long time that Jolie supposedly liked Nate. "You're always looking at him. Didn't you decide to use a different tactic since the first one didn't work? Embarrassed about being exposed?" That girl continued yapping. "Yeah? Love him? There's no such thing. I only looked at him because he was different from me," Jolie thought to herself. The nasty classmate stepped closer to the quiet girl. She touched her nasty finger to Jolie and said something provocative. "Well, I realize it's hard for you to be honest. After all, it's not your fault your mom is like this. Don't worry. I'm good at keeping secrets, but sometimes you still can't help yourself," said the bastard. After saying that, the handsome Nate himself crept up unnoticed from behind. He immediately said hello to his classmates. The guy came closer to Jolie to ask about her well-being, but the girl reminded that he should not worry about it, because everything is already normal. On the way to school, Jolie also met her roommate Bob, but they only looked at each other without saying a word. Their relationship at school remained the same. Nothing. Sitting in class, the first student of the school was thinking about not studying at all, but about the last words of her classmate. "Does Helen know about my mother?" The girl couldn't realize. Jolie and her mom always lived just the two of them. In addition, the protagonist did not know her very well. The girl had no idea where and why so much pain was in her. "The only thing I'm sure of, to endure this pain, she's taking it out on me. I remember as a child, I tried to talk to her. There were times when I was worried because she didn't go to work regularly despite being sick," a high school student recalled. "But all worries faded away after she came back drunk. Gradually, I cared less and less as I cleaned up her urine off the floor." Jolie struggled to admit. They were poor, but after all, not all the poor are broken by their situation. Mother's wound is very old and deep. I guessed that it was eating away at her body and mind. Of course, this conjecture brought me no comfort, pondered the unhappy child. Not long ago, my mom often left money in the corner of the room. They stayed there for a few days, so she asked if I could take it. As usual, her mother didn't answer that day, so the girl took them without asking. She used that amount to buy used books. Her mother never retaliated against her for them. After that, the money she left behind became Jolie's pockets, and the girl did not try to find out how it was earned. "You have to try harder than you do now. Since you were born into such a family, you should do at least twice as much as the others. No matter the situation, it should have raised me to be less pathetic." Jolie thought only of those words. A teacher approached the scheming girl. He cracked her lightly on the head with a folded piece of paper. "Hey, stop dangling your head in the clouds. You think because you have good grades, you can sit around doing nothing? Am I a joke to you? Since your grades are good, shouldn't you study harder by listening to me?" The educator pressured her. "Oh yeah, why would you want to do that? You're going to go to college in Seoul anyway, right? Is that why you're ignoring people from our neighborhood?" The mathematician pouted again. He was a perverted bastard who had no right to be a teacher. "I kept rejecting his offer to join the math club. After that, he starts bullying me every time he sees me in any way possible," explained the protagonist. "He has obvious intentions. I'm not yet crazy enough to accept such an offer. He's a scumbag for harassing female students whenever he gets the chance." The girl continued to not listen to him. "I'm talking to you, if anything. When adults talk, you're supposed to listen obediently, assuming that everything we've said is right." He continued to rub it in. All Jolie could think about at that moment was making the man die. Then the handsome boy of the class stood up for her. Nate told her that yesterday, because of him and not feeling well, the girl had fainted. So I guess the blame for her not being able to concentrate is on me. The boyfriend went on to defend her, but the professor himself didn't see it as the newcomer's fault. And why is it your fault? Is she so crazy about you that she has a love sickness? Did she not sleep last night? The old man spoke out unkindly. At that moment, a couple of centimeters away from the teacher, a basketball flew at full speed straight into the blackboard. It was thrown by the so-called bully of the class. That underdog threw the ball at her with such force. Shouldn't have done that. The same goes for the others. Jolie was defended by her secret roommate, to which the teacher only replied that these students should think about it and write an explanatory note today. Helen asked the newcomer why he'd done it. He wouldn't have said anything and could have just walked away. But Nate had defended the girl because he thought it was his fault. She told me it was okay. And not to worry more? Pondered the boy and looked at the suffering girl. But Nate realized perfectly well to himself that he was initially worried about her. A couple minutes passed. Jolie noticed that Bob had already gotten up from under his desk. The girl thought he was done, but then noticed that the kid's sheet was completely blank. Well, if he gives that blank slip to the math teacher, I don't think the math teacher will just let him go, pondered Jolie, more likely to charge that he broke school rules and probably punish in some other way. In the opinion of many, the mathematician is a very good and fair man. Good, she realized. I didn't know Bob was the kind of person who would react to the words of outsiders. The guy was opening up to her more and more every day. In a way, it's only natural for them to have doubts. This is the second time Bob, who only slept through high school, has intervened in the protagonist's problems. This time he did it in a very direct way. I love the current relationship with Bob, a friendship between two people that no one knows about. That was what the girl was missing. If someone was around, there's no way he'd joke about it. So if our relationship is going to break down, it's only going to be because of me, Jolie decided. Jolie decided to catch up with her friend in the hallway to take the letter of explanation from him. Otherwise, the mathematician would claw at the boy. But Bob only yanked his hand away. It was all from the outside that Helen saw. The classmate immediately started laughing. I think Jolie is only pretending to be friendly. The look on Bob's face is so intimidating, whispered the bully in her girlfriend's ear. Nate also approached the boys to show his help. Bob, if you don't know how to write, we'll give you a hint, said the guy, but it didn't seem to interest Jolie's roommate at all. He merely turned around and walked away. Don't think I'm a connoisseur either. I can't write mine either. The student confessed to the girl. I didn't ask him to stick up for me, but still my fault in this too, thought the girl. At that moment, Jolie decided to support the guy and also help him. Misunderstanding a teacher I respect hurts me. I sincerely regret the act I committed. If a teacher who has an open heart will allow me to correct myself, I will always think before I speak and try to become a model student. Share what the schoolgirl wrote about. Perhaps it smacked of sarcasm, but they had no other choice. At one point, Jolie decided she should distance herself from her classmate. I envy the prostate who reigns next to you, where no one bothers you, thought the high school student as she looked at him. Even if you don't do anything, you think you won't find someone who won't be comfortable around you. The girl reasoned. As Nate stared at her like that, thoughts came into his head, and which jewels he didn't want to bother with. Torn school uniform, slippers, hair that's been washed in the sink, the smell of sweat that probably came from me. All of it. Just by your existence, you make me feel insecure. Jolie continued to think as she positioned herself next to this handsome man. Helen started pestering the smartest girl in the class again. What's your relationship with Bob? This time, the cheeky girl asked. But of course, Jolie did not even begin to answer this question, since the classmate should not care. After school, the high school girl decided to go to her favorite place as usual. On the way, she assumed that Bob was already at home. I should go and ask him why he reacted so coldly during the day, decided the girl. I can certainly guess the reason. He either wanted to keep our communication a secret, or he has a secret. The girl reasoned, but Jolie tried to push those musings from her head. I'm not going there just to learn. Bob comes second out of reasons of importance, and naturally studying comes first. There's not much time left before the exam. She continued to deny her thoughts about the boy. As she got closer to the house, she wondered if he might not be there. I won't be able to get down the mountain by myself. Will I have to sleep there again? Well, it's better than being at home with Mom. The girl also kept wondering what Helen knew about her mother. Although that dog hates me, it's not to the point of deliberately harming me. Jolie calmed herself. Could it be because of a handsome classmate? Being away from him will probably be fine. I guess I should ask my mom for once. What would be expected of her? Pondered the apprentice before entering the house. This time, the girl decided to scare Bob a little. She quietly crept up to the guy on the second floor to scare him. He must be in such shock that he'll hit his head on the ceiling. That's the price you'll pay for yanking my arms so mercilessly, mouthed the girl to herself. But things didn't turn out at all the way she had planned. As soon as he saw her, he immediately grabbed her by the neck. As soon as the roommate realized that his girlfriend was in front of him, he immediately began to apologize. The girl was only very frightened. I thought it was some strange type who entered even without knocking and with quiet steps. And why are you doing things you haven't done before? Making me nervous. He justified himself. After that, Bob decided to go down to the first floor to get a cup of water for Miss. I told you to walk with the lights on! The girl continued to yell. Bob handed the girl some water. The boys made up. At that moment, Jolie realized that he was a completely different person than in school. I guess I shouldn't worry about a fatal fall down the stairs. After all, I can die quicker from suffocation, said the girl jokingly, to keep the man feeling guilty. Their topic was abruptly changed by the guy asking about how good her friend's agility was. He was talking about today's ball. The guy also resented why he didn't know about it yet. It seems like you've slept in front of me more than once. At that moment, Bob admitted that he sometimes had nightmares. That was why he was here. But the classmate turned the subject back on her. Why did you come here again? Do you like studying so much? He asked, though the girl herself didn't realize where she got such a strong interest from. Well, but it's the only place I can do what I want, the quiet girl admitted. To avoid talking about an uncomfortable topic, Jolie decided to ask her friend about the explanatory paper. Do you know how strict the math teacher is? He won't just leave it alone, said the girl, on what Bob again attracted to the conversation of her classmate. Allegedly, Nate actively helped the girl. After Jolie did the required homework, her roommate walked the schoolgirl home that evening. I finished later than usual because I needed to memorize the accumulated English words. In the middle of the road, Bob noticed that the streetlights were out. The girl said it was a short distance home, so she could walk home on her own. Worried for no reason, so how sorry are you for strangling me? Jolie thought to herself. The road actually looked scary. And, well, since you're really worried, so be it. I'll let you escort me home, said the girl to show her pride. When they were almost there, the girl noticed her mom on the road. She immediately ran up to her. Why are you here? Let's go home. Trying to drive the woman back so she wouldn't embarrass her. But the angry mother didn't care at all. She swung with all her might at her child. The girl fell so hard that her Achilles heel began to hurt very badly. I didn't want anyone to see this. With pity, she thought. But Bob ran up to his friend at that very second to block her with his own body. He hugged the girl, protecting her from the sick woman. After a couple of minutes, Jolie asked Bob to step back. Then the brave girl went to her mother to grab her hand. The mother resented why Jolie had not come home for such a long time. Surely the atmosphere at home is suitable for learning. Shall I tell you when you started your home education? Otherwise, I have too many wonderful memories. Your rules were orders, etiquette mandatory. You don't explain the reason for your beatings. Don't pretend to be a normal mom, explained Jolie. The daughter was only disgusted by this. After saying this, she abruptly pulled her hand out and walked away in the direction of the house. Bob was left alone with the unpleasant woman. Then the guy decided to explain everything to her. There is nothing I can do if you still don't believe me. However, you have nothing to worry about. Jolie isn't doing anything wrong. Her head is full of nothing but studying. The guy confessed, but the woman just walked away silently. The next day at school, Jolie sat in a sad mood. The girl already wanted to transfer to another school. She even dreamed of simply disappearing from this world. Mom's seizures were familiar, but it happened at the exact moment Bob was around. Now the girl didn't want to cross paths with him now. However, since they are in the same class, it's impossible. I don't think it's possible to go to that house now. What to do? She didn't know. There was not much time left before the exam, but the girl didn't know how long she would have to avoid her roommate. She didn't notice herself writing too much for an explanatory letter. Jolie decided to give it up and go back. They won't accept it anyway. Pessimistically, she decided. As she passed Bob, the schoolgirl saw that he was asleep again. But along his neck, she also noticed a new scratch. It happened after a fight with her mother. When the girl walked into the teacher's office, she noticed a very beautiful woman. Wow, she's perfect from head to toe. A woman who is completely out of place in this backward neighborhood. I think I can sense who it is, thought the high school girl. The mathematician noticed Jolie peeking out from under the door, so he invited the girl to meet the unknown lady. "Oh, Jolie, you're just in time. Come over here. Come here," whispered the man. The teacher introduced Jolie as the best student in the school. He had been talking about her for a long time. "For a country girl, she has quite a lot of brains," the man said jokingly to lighten the mood. The lady reported that she heard the girl faint after Nate hit her with the sword. Just as the high school girl thought, it really turned out to be the handsome boy's mother. There was nothing wrong with that. Still, I want to apologize. Are you okay? The lady went on to say, but Jolie was more surprised that her son had told the woman about it, and now she had even come to the school, even though the woman hadn't really expected anything from the institution. All she needed was for the children here to be healthy. At least that was what she said. "My son has been studying in this institution since recently. That's also the reason why we want to build a gym, because this is my hometown." The woman informed both the teacher and the schoolgirl. So hopefully the teachers will be a little more lenient on issues related to children's health. When my son was in Seoul, he never wrote anything like an explanatory note, the aristocrat admitted. Now the woman reported that it now pained her to see Nate worrying about it. She thought that such useless worries only hindered her studies. All the lady's words were kindly confirmed by the teacher. It was evident that he was as scared as a subject who had received a warning from the king. Abruptly, the very culprit of the whole celebration, Nate, walked into the room. He was clearly unhappy that his mom was here, so the woman decided to call it a day. "The teachers are probably busy. Took up too much of your time. Enjoy your dinner without any worries. Consider it my sincerity," the woman informed, slowly sliding an envelope with a not insignificant amount of money across the table. After the prince's mother left, the other teachers discussed how shocked they were, and the girl was finally able to hand in her explanatory note. After Jolie walked out into the hallway, she was stopped by a classmate's mom. Nate, for some reason, decided at that very moment to introduce his mom to his classmate. The boy said that his mom said she had something to do at school, and that's why she was here. What kind of things do parents have to do at school? "I came because my kid had an accident," she corrected her son defiantly sweetly. Then the girl mentioned the fact that the woman came because of the gym. "Anyway, it's all for the kids." The woman managed to get out of it. Apparently the high school girl had said too much. The lady moved closer to Jolie to quietly voice her impressions of her. "Beautiful, and you look smart. Are you free on Saturday? Would you like to come over?" The woman asked unexpectedly. Jolie was surprised, after all. She doesn't get along that closely with her son. The woman began asking the girl what she liked to eat in order to make dinner. "It would be good to get together in the afternoon. Come up to Faith Church. You'll see the house. Shall I send a car if it's far?" she asked, but the student had to decline. After planning the meeting, the mother left the boys alone. "Sorry, my mom is a bit of a decision-maker herself," Nate said with a sad sigh. Jolie admitted that she can't come at her boyfriend for no reason. "Tell my mom I'm sorry," said the girl, to which she got the reply that she was invited and should go there. Before she could add anything, the guy gave a final message that they would see each other on Saturday and left. The girl still didn't fully understand what had even happened. This conversation was overheard by Helen's stupid bitch classmate. She was very angry because she didn't expect this turn of events. So why did she invite her? They told me they didn't know the details. Discussed the girl with her other girlfriends. At this time, Bob was also sitting in the study. Knowing Mother's temper, she shouldn't do something she might get flown in for again. Besides, she has quite an irritable temper herself. But in the end, she left it like that? Why? Jolie's roommate pondered. Her friend was sitting right in front of him, and it wasn't hard for the guy to notice that she was having a harder time concentrating today than usual. He thought it was because she had a lot on her mind, though he really liked the moments when Jolie was immersed in her studies. There's something special in the air of this moment. At least, that's what the guy thought. In an instant, the surroundings become quiet. It feels like everything is floating in the air and quietly sinking. Meanwhile, Jolie is haphazardly moving her pen and her eyes are shining. Plus, those sounds a girl's pen makes are special, because the only one that makes me not feel lonely. He pondered. The guy's life was very boring, and Jolie was the only one he found anything interesting. She was famous at school, yet not much was known about her. She stood out because she was good-looking and a good student. There was no one like her. Jolie seemed like someone who wanted to be alone, like an isolated island. And that must have been what awakened the others to think of her in a negative way. However, Bob had no other feelings for her than curiosity. In the same class as me. Sits in front of me. I spent a lot of time just looking at the back of her head, and even that was delightful. No matter how many times I fell asleep or woke up, she always sat upright. Bob admitted to himself. The boy didn't know if studying so well was really fun. Since he lived in a boring neighborhood, solving problems was like a game to him. Or maybe that was the thread she was holding on to. I've learned a lot of things just by looking at Jolie's back. One of them is that her gaze is often directed in the direction of a classmate of a handsome boy, pondered the local bully. Somehow that disappointed him then. He thought she had fallen in love with Prince Charming like the other girls. But looking at the cold expression on her face with which she looks at this favorite of everyone, oddly enough, made me laugh. He admitted, "And that was all there was until I met her in that house." That was when he first saw that look on her face. Watching her was interesting, and their relationship was still a secret. They both felt comfortable in that house, like normal high schoolers. But now Bob didn't know how to solve it. The reason she's avoiding me is because she showed me a side of herself that she's been desperately hiding. That kind of thing can't even be called shameful. It's not our fault we were born without knowing we had weird parents. Reasoned the guy in the last desk. The next day, Jolie had to go to her classmate's house. She really didn't want to do that, and she didn't even know why she agreed. I had nothing to wear, so I thought about buying new clothes dozens of times. But in the end, I didn't. I would look cheesy either way. A girl with low self-esteem pondered. It's all because of the math teacher. Here's if he hadn't told us to write an explanatory note. Jolie still didn't understand why that woman had invited her. Thought I showed arrogance by mentioning the gym, or just out of curiosity about the student, and which her son often mentions. Jolie guessed. Whatever happens, All I have to do is eat in peace and leave. Let's not be nervous. She consoled herself. As they'd agreed, Nate met his classmate outside the church. Not hungry? Did you have breakfast? Wasn't hard to walk? Glad it didn't rain. Questioned the boy, annoying the older girl even more. The guy said that sometimes the mom is in the mood to invite guests to her house. Then the girl realized that wasn't the case at all. I think she was really excited because she invited my friend over for the first time since we moved in. She also paid a lot of attention to the food, thinking she would enjoy it more. Shared Nate. Nate also decided to ask about Jolie's favorite dish as well, but she didn't have one. And the girl wasn't at all interested in sharing her preferences. One should criticize those who can afford to hide such things. And the high school girl eats soup with Bob every night. On the way home, Nate admitted that his mom is very interested in his grades and school life. She asked about the best student in the class, and I unintentionally seemed to ramble on. I guess she's curious about you because most all of my stories have been about you, he explained. But whether it was definitely so, the girl never could find out. You came to the office because of the letter of explanation, didn't you? I think you also know that it was because that situation involved me too. I'm not going to ask you about it. All I did at home was talk about the injustice of my math teacher, said Nate. The guys still didn't understand why they'd been told to write a letter of explanation, even though they'd done nothing. Jolie, Nate, and Bob were just scapegoats for his anger. But the high school student said Bob deserved it after all, because he was the one who threw the basketball right in the teacher's direction. Now that I think about it, what did his words mean? He said he was afraid of something, so he's staying in that house. Jolie didn't understand. Should we have invited him too? He should have written a letter of explanation too, right? Wondered Nate. But the girl explained that a classmate would hardly come as well, because he's always doing what he does. Like sleeping. Isn't that weird? I've never seen you and him together, but sometimes it feels like you two are really close. Nate spoke up, much to the girl's embarrassment. She didn't think anyone would be able to guess. Bob, who is usually quiet, as if he doesn't exist, somehow seems to be involved in your affairs. A classmate remarked. But the kid only suggested that maybe the other one was a philanthropist, or maybe he hated math, too. Jolie hadn't even realized Nate thought that. No, it's just his guess, right? Doesn't matter if he knows something, though, as long as others don't find out. She calmed herself. Then the guy also mentioned the moment Jolie got sick. If you think about it that way, the day you passed out and were lying in the nurse's station, you were thankful for the stove and the window. He stated sharply, I only came to check in with you between variables. I've never done anything like that before, replied the boy, to clarify why he had broached the subject so abruptly. The classmates walked up to the guy's house. It was indeed a beautiful mansion. Although I expected something like this, but it's a more beautiful house than I imagined, pronounced Jolie to herself. Should I be grateful that half my mind is still occupied with what Nate just said? Otherwise, I'd be drowning in thoughts of inferiority. Reasoned the high school girl. In the lobby, the boys were greeted by the kid's mom. Welcome. You're here on time. It must have been hard to get here. You must be hungry? Greeted the guests with a lady's greeting. The butler escorted Jolie to the table. At this time, the lady of the house announced that there would be no other guests today besides the girl. I couldn't understand your taste, so I tried different things and it ended up like this. The woman justified herself, although in fact it was too much, so even her son thought so. They took a seat at the table. With a clap of her hand, the woman summoned her servants. They hadn't served the warm food yet, for fear it might get cold, so the maids brought it only now. At the table, her mother was immediately interested in the guests' studies. She knew that her teachers praise her very much and say that she learns very well, so she asked whether the schoolgirl is engaged in additional lessons with a tutor. But the woman was very surprised when she found out that Jolie is fully engaged in herself. Jolie was served a steak. While the girl didn't know where to start her meal of meat, The mom was having a bit of an argument with her son about studying. It wasn't very comfortable. The next question from the woman was what university the child was aiming for. "I want to go where I can get good grades," the girl replied. But then the lady asked about the specific specialty, because the direction could coincide with her son's choice. "I already felt it at school. There's something strange and unpleasant about this woman's words. It's like she knows everything," Jolie said to herself. "Since you have good grades, it would be good to enter the medical field. And if it's abroad, it would be even better. Well, you can relax and go to law school or something." The woman recommended, but it seemed to the girl that she was only advising what was popular now. The high school senior decided to reply that she still had time to think about it, so she would think about it later. "I'll give in to you," she decided then. Suddenly, the girl got the question she was so afraid to hear. "What does your father do? I think he must be very proud to have such a clever daughter," added the aristocrat. Julie didn't know what to do, and out of fright allegedly accidentally spilled a glass of juice on herself. The woman had no choice but to suggest a change of clothes. "A change of clothes would be nice. Manageress, Kim, please bring some clothes," she ordered the servant. The girl really hadn't expected such a question. No one had ever asked her about her father. She was really unprepared. Jolie didn't even ask her mom about it. Kim led the schoolgirl to some room. "Have a seat. I'll get everything right away," explained the house staff member, and the girl herself continued to speculate about the question of her father. "Why would such a question make me vulnerable? I don't want to be ignored, especially in front of her, and when Nate is around." A couple minutes later, the owner of the house came into the room. She brought with her some kind of t-shirt. "I think it will fit you. It should be comfortable," said the woman, for which Jolie thanked her, although the girl noticed that this lady was clearly up to something. The schoolgirl decided that she just needed a quick change of clothes. But then the woman started saying something to her under her arm. "Looks like I made a mistake earlier. It's all from lack of sleep. You don't have a father, right? And your mother doesn't seem to be in her right mind. Quite a complicated situation," Auntie said in a calm voice. "I like people like you. Children who come out of difficult family situations have a certain quality. Despite their young age, supporting such children gives me satisfaction. Many people consider it a social responsibility of the rich, but I would call it a privilege." "Unfortunate," she said. To get away from the heavy topic, the woman decided to ask for a smile from her guest. As the girl put on the shirt she had been given, it reminded her of something. These clothes were for the servants in their house. "It looks good on you. Don't you want to look in the mirror?" Humiliated the woman. The girl was not afraid and answered her so sharply. "You did it to say something," Julie remarked. The woman then asked if the girl liked her son, but it was the other way around, with Jolie pointing out that she might be the one the prince likes. "My son is a good kid. He'll even cover a dog with a newspaper just to keep it from getting wet. But still, you have to know the difference between affection and attention, right?" She let the teenager go. How much the woman annoyed the quiet man at that moment. "You even help me with such nonsense that only dogs understand," thought the schoolgirl. "But you couldn't tell the difference. That's why you invited me, didn't you?" At this question, the woman merely put her hand on the girl's shoulder she indicated, in a tone of passive aggression, that she liked Jolie's attitude. But that is to say, she should have controlled her tongue. "You want to reach the heights, keep that in mind. If you need money, I'll give it to you. If you need clothes, I'll provide them. If you need food in the house, I'll provide it. If you get a scholarship, thanks to our foundation, you will be able to see a world that is nothing like the one around you now," the stranger's mother said. "Of course, provided you don't forget the fundamental difference between you and my son," the woman said lastly and left the room. A fundamental difference. At first glance, the offer looks tempting. This woman's help would provide an opportunity to change the current situation, but she hides a line that must not be crossed. She presented it as if Jolie could soar in the sky, but in reality the wings would have been broken from the start. Still, The suggestion is relevant for the moment. But can I hold on to it, knowing it's a hand outstretched with clear clarity? Which life is more humbling? Pondered Jolie. After this provocative conversation, Jolie asked the woman to give her name. Nate's son doesn't call his mother aunt, said the high school girl. That night, Bob lay on the second floor, contemplating the fact that his girlfriend was now near their mutual classmate, the son of a major. His head was a mess, so the guy decided he should exercise. He took a lying down position and started doing push-ups. At the same time, the bully was thinking about how he could make up with his roommate. Bob decided that he should go out for a run. When he opened the door, Jolie was standing in front of him, wet from the rain. It was obvious that the girl was in a terrible mood. The high school girl silently went to the second floor. She plopped down on the boy's bed. "Ah, no, well, I'm so hated, so angry, it's like I'm going crazy. How these people who live in affluence are annoying. All these people are annoying. Die, all of you!" screamed the girl, who was very angry. "Fine, dirty the bed all you want. It was time for a change anyway." Resigned to her yelling, Bob said. The guy also picked up on the fact that the friend was in new clothes. "I spilled some juice on my clothes, and they gave me the shirt their servants are wearing. They did it on purpose, and I was trying to ignore it." An upset Jolie explained. Then her neighbor asked her why she didn't want to change her clothes. But it was obvious that if the schoolgirl took off her clothes, she would be naked. She did not even bring her own clothes, as she was in a hurry. At that moment, Bob silently handed her his shirt. "Then put this on. Your clothes are too wet anyway," he decided, and turned away so as not to embarrass his student. "But what about you? What are you going to wear yourself?" The girl asked, but all she heard in response was a request that she throw him a shirt. After Jolie changed her clothes, Bob tore her blouse mercilessly with his strong hands. The girl was angry. "Why would you rip my clothes? I was going to alter it and wear it," reported the excellent girl. "It's times like this that I wonder if you have pride or not," the guy replied, tossing the other man's item into the trash. But the question of clothing for Bob still remained. "It's raining and chilly. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? If you don't have anything to wear, why don't you at least put a blanket on?" Bob hadn't really expected that answer. He climbed up to Jolie's second floor to warm up a bit, though he didn't give the appearance of being cold. "Better snuggle up yourself. I'm not cold," he declared, but her friend still decided to cover the guy up. "If you catch a cold, don't blame me," she said in a serious tone, but with a touch of concern. Now that they were sitting together on the same bed, Bob didn't know how to start a dialogue. "Should I ask what was there? Or should I ask my mother first?" pondered the boy. But the girl was the first to start the conversation regarding his fresh wound. Bob, as usual, decided to turn it into a joke. "Don't hit people. It's scary what happens when you start hitting with a nice hand like your mother's," he said. It was a maneuver so he could move on to more serious things. "How often do you get drunk? Hard?" a friend asked, sincerely interested. "No, it's like a seizure. You just have to wait for it to pass. And you have to be careful when she throws something," the girl said and exhaled sadly. At that moment, she wanted to hear Bob's situation as well. "You are now. I think that would be fair. Now that your secrets are out, do you want me to reveal mine as well? It's really a Jolie-style decision. Also, words like that from her seem to imply that she really wants to continue this relationship." He thought for a second. The guy decided to tell his story. "My father was a gangster. He passed away a few years ago. Well, even when my father was alive, life wasn't easy." Bob began his story. "After my father's death came the real time of war, because the revenge violence haunted me persistently. I'm not going to go into such details, of course, but however, it seems in some ways I feel even relieved." A friend confessed at that moment. "Probably wanted to confess his feelings too," pondered the strong boy. I guess he was just as human as her mother. At least that's what Bob himself thought. That same night, the girl confessed that she wished his life had turned out better. so it wouldn't be on the level of a neighborhood thug. Anyway, he's already dead. Are you afraid of a dead man? You know, the living are more frightening, she said to encourage the guy. He wasn't beaten. Someone else had to suffer. You look like your father, and you love like this, showing off your power. The girl went on to say, after analyzing his story. Do you sleep a lot too, like your father? No, I think it would be hard to be a gangster if he slept that long. Jolie continued to try to turn it into a joke this time, though the guy, of course, denied that he was sleeping very much. Hey, it seems like you sleep at least 18 hours out of 24 hours a night, right? For the record, I barely get 5 hours of sleep, the interlocutor said sweetly. Then the guy confessed why he actually sleeps so much. As it turns out, he believes that if you close your eyes, no one will piss you off. That's why Bob constantly has the urge to fall asleep and have some interesting dreams. After he had said everything he wanted to say, Bob silently started downstairs. He went to make soup. You can go downstairs and study, or you can do something else, he advised the lady. But Jolie needs books to do that. The girl also asked him not to forget the eggs. What were you doing in there anyway? Didn't even eat? Asked the friend to the hungry little girl. Jolie decided to follow him, and while she was going down the stairs, the guy stopped abruptly. Bob silently turned around and looked directly into the girl's eyes. Her head was quite wet still. The friend took his hand off the handrail of the steps to fix the girl's beautiful hair a little. I'll get you some towels. Dry your hair, the man said thoughtfully. The next morning, the guys were already sitting in class, in their seats as usual. Jolie was once again mulling over her recent interactions with her boyfriend. What can I say about Bob? Sometimes I think he's so nice to me. It's kind of amazing, debated Jolie to herself. He gives me his clothes. When he hears that I've been disrespected, he gets angry. Even if I act rashly, he sighs and accepts everything. He's also good at making soup and doesn't try to exploit or threaten others, even when he sees my weaknesses, pondered the girl. Also, when I was sick, he brought in a stove, and he covered the window from the sun. The protagonist remembered, but the girl realized that she should stop thinking about him. Now is not the time to worry about such things. Even if Bob gets naked and dances in front of me, in no way it should bother me, decided the girl, as she had exams to start soon. The girl was pulled from her musings by Nate, who came over to inquire about her classmates' well-being. Why did you leave in a hurry then when I went to get an umbrella? Aren't you sick? He inquired. However, Jolie had to reiterate once again that she was fine. The girl didn't understand why he approached her at all. Doesn't he know that every time he talks to me, all eyes are on him? The honors student remarked. A classmate handed the girl her shirt. For that, she was truly grateful to him, though nothing would ever override those words from his mother again. If my mom said something tactless that day and offended you, I will apologize on my behalf. Not that there's any malice in that, but sometimes she speaks without thinking, he remarked. Nate was a prince who really doesn't know anything. Then the girl didn't hold back and asked how it felt to be so protected. The boy didn't seem to expect to hear such a question, but before he could answer, the teacher walked into the classroom and the lesson began. So you need to form groups of 2. Choose one of the topics presented here to study. The class head will present the list of groups and topics today before the end of the day. Everyone pay attention, Bao, informed the entire audience by the teacher. Jolie really hated group projects. She thought it was just cumbersome and noisy. First of all, the world is meant to be lived alone. So why on earth would we want to do anything with anyone? It's much more efficient to do things alone. The best student in the school thought. All because of idiots with overly positive illusions about society. Anyway, I don't have any friends who would ask me to do something about them. The high school girl knew exactly that. The girl remembered that she could work with Bob. Isn't it only natural that he and I would end up paired together? And then, even if I were at school with him, no one would think it was strange. And going from home to school, walking around the streets, that sort of thing would be possible. The girl thought, but at that moment, Nate decided to suggest that they work together. Until when is he going to make it look like he's a prince on a white horse? Thinks that he will save me since I have no one to do it with? The girl, without a second thought, decided to refuse the collective work. Then a classmate decided to ask who she had in mind for this assignment. That question, which is nothing special, is confusing for some reason. Is it because he knows Nate means Bob? She wondered. It already seemed to the girls that this guy wasn't too different from his mother. Then the desk of the best student of the class was abruptly approached by Helen. The girls suddenly decided to offer to work together her hated classmate. Jolie was greatly surprised. "Don't you think that you and I are a little different?" replied the excellent student. "What, are you ignoring my favor? I'm saying this because I really want to say something to you. Otherwise, I guess I won't hold back," added the bitch. She has something to say about my mother? There's a mountain because of that. I don't want to be with any of them. But if I had to choose one, it would be... The schoolgirl didn't finish, but the answer seemed to pop up immediately. "It sounds like you're straight up itching to say something," said Jolie. Now the honor student thought it was time to shut that mouth somehow. After they talked it over, Jolie also turned her attention to Bob sleeping on the back desk. Said he was sleeping a little bit? Yep, how about that? I'm deaf right now then. Helen called her classmate up to the roof to say what she wanted to say, with both of them clearly not thrilled about the encounter. "Actually, you should be thankful for that. Did you want me to say that in front of the others?" The bully continued sarcastically. Now came the moment when the bitch could say the very thing she had planned. "What do you really want to tell me?" Jolie decided to start first. "Why did you go to our classmate's house? Why did his mom invite you?" In an angry tone, Helen asked, to which the protagonist replied that the guy's mom was only interested in who had first place in school. "Thinking about the witch in this house. Helen's just a bug in front of her. I can deal with her." Decided the quiet girl was brave. The excellent girl wanted to get right to the point. Jolie asked why the bitch thought she could control an ordinary classmate with her mother's help. The interlocutor continued to drag out the intrigue, unclear why. "Get right to the point, Helen. If you're going to say something roundabout, don't call me again," informed Jolie. "Wow. You really don't know? I heard your mom is visiting a motel in the city in broad daylight, and how dare you even live off the money from that kind of business? You think because you're the best in school, you can do that? And Nate is only being nice to you and out of character, not because he likes you," said the bully with a smirk. "My dad saw her twice there. Your mom stood out because she was tall, had unusual clothes, and a strange gait." Helen continued to tell me. Jolie just couldn't believe it. "Mom is crazy, so she couldn't do something like that. No way." The poor little girl didn't realize. "I wish you knew about this. It's really annoying when dirt looks down on you," said a classmate. Jolie tried to the last to not be influenced by what people like Helen were saying. "Actually, my parents are very worried. They said that since there is a daughter of such a woman in the school, shouldn't it be reported? He said that if you do that kind of work, you get all sorts of dirty diseases, and that means you can infect others as well." The wench informed humiliatingly. Jolie then tried to defend herself and asked why the classmate's father was there, but Helen replied that he was walking by because he had a business meeting. There are only bars next to the motel. They are not open during the day. If you just walk down the main street, you won't see anyone coming in or out of there, because the entrance to such places is designed to avoid prying eyes. Smart girl's point. At that moment, the bitch just couldn't take it anymore and slapped the quiet one with all her might. But Jolie was not deterred. The girl pinned her classmate against the roof fence. She sent Helen away without remorse. "Why don't we try to see how this ends? If a rumor spreads that the man who paid me the money was your father, who's going to be in big trouble?" The honors student boldly replied, "It's your mother who's going to hell. The person who has the most to lose is you. You're going to lose your family in exchange for the easy words you used to tease a classmate." blackmailed Jolie. After the opponent pushed the girl away, the other guys appeared on the roof. Are they done? Why are the girls fighting so fiercely? We wanted to pretend we didn't notice, but it was too noisy, said one of them. They were the hooligans of their criminal neighborhood. The boldest one approached the quiet one to tell her that he was on the side of the hotties. The girls were very much frightened, but in a moment their savior came, their classmate, Bob. I am glad to see him home, but I have never been happier than I am now. He did come at just the right second, and it looks like he's here for the long haul. Now there's a man who can take care of them. But before he did, the manly friend beckoned to Jolie. I have something to tell you, he said in a menacing tone.